Raisa stared at him as if she hadn't understood the words. "What did you say?" This time he repeated more clearly. "I said that's enough. Macha has the right to live her own life. She had plans today. I didn't tell her. It's my fault." Raisa turned pale with anger. For her, it wasn't just a contradiction. It was a betrayal. Her son, her own son, had just taken his wife's side against her. The act was unthinkable, unbearable. She stood up, declared that she would not set foot here again until Macha apologized, grabbed her bag, ordered her husband to leave, and stormed out of the apartment in a tempest of resentment. When the door slammed shut, a brutal silence fell. On the table, the skewers were getting cold next to the untouched cake. And Artyom remained, alone, sitting in the midst of this chaos, with a mix of relief and guilt. He had just said no to his mother for the first time in his life. But he already knew that this no would change everything. Meanwhile, Macha was experiencing one of the most soothing evenings she had had in a long time. With Larissa, she was attending a lecture on Japanese culture, taking notes, looking at prints, finally breathing outside of the constant pressure. Amid books, sea buckthorn tea, and conversations about haikus, she was rediscovering something she had almost lost. Not the daughter-in-law, not the practical wife, not the one who has to smile and put up with everything, just Macha herself. A woman who dreams of writing, a woman who wants to see the world, a woman who deserves better than just a life, no longer asking for permission to exist. When she came home that night around 10 o'clock, she found Artyom alone, sitting at the kitchen table, in front of a meal that had served no purpose. He looked drained. She immediately understood that something had happened. He told her everything, the reproaches, the shouting, the orders, and above all, the sentence he had uttered. "I told him to stop." Macha remained silent for a moment, then she asked calmly, "And now?" Artyom looked at her. Sincerely broken by this realization, he confessed to her that he had been wrong, that he should have warned her, that he should have protected her long ago, that he had let his mother intrude into their relationship as if it were normal, and that he hadn't realized everything she was enduring. And for the first time, he wasn't looking for excuses or justifications. This time, Masha believed him. Not completely, not yet, but at last she heard something. Something she had been waiting for months, a sense of responsibility taken. So she told him the truth, the whole truth. That she loved him, yes, but that she could no longer live as if her place in this house depended on his mother's approval. That she didn't want to spend her life being compared, corrected, judged. That she had her own dreams, her own plans, her own dignity. And that if he wanted to build a real family with her, then he had to choose to be her husband, not the obedient son of a woman incapable of letting go. That night, something was repaired between them. Not everything, but the essential part. The days passed, then the weeks. Raisa Ivanovna waited for apologies that never came. She called the family, told her version, cast herself as the victim, and accused Masha of having stolen her son. But for the first time, Artyom did not give in. When she finally called him herself, furious and demanding apologies, he answered her with a calm she had never seen in him before. He loved his wife, he had chosen his family, and if she wanted to be part of their lives, she would have to show respect. Masha. No shouting, no insults, no humiliation. Raisa was left speechless. She, who had been in control for so many years, no longer recognized her own son. And while she locked herself away in her pride, something beautiful began to come alive again in the little apartment in Tula. Masha enrolled in Japanese classes. Her notebook filled up with clumsy ideograms, new words, fragments of poems. She started writing again. Artyom, for his part, began to seriously train in entrepreneurship. In the evenings they had dinner together, talked, laughed, sometimes even about the things that had hurt them so much. They bought new little owls at the markets. At the flea markets, they no longer imagined the future as a blurry backdrop. Instead, it was something to truly build together, far from expectations, far from imposed roles. Then one evening, Artyom came home earlier than usual. Macha was sitting at the table, surrounded by Japanese books, her hair hastily tied up. He handed her an envelope and asked her to close her eyes. Inside, there were 2 tickets. Destination, Tokyo. Departure in April, at the time of the cherry blossom. On the paper, he had written a few simple words. Thank you for being you. Thank you for not giving up. I love you. Matcha burst into tears. Not out of sadness, but out of relief, gratitude, happiness, finally something she could breathe in. Because this trip was not just a trip. It was proof that they had chosen their life, their real life. Not the one dictated by fear, by habits, by guilt, but the one you build yourself. When you finally dare to set boundaries, to say no to what destroys you and yes to what saves you. Raisa Ivanovna, for her part, never really apologized. She continued for a while to repeat that Masha had taken her son from her. But deep down it wasn't true. Masha hadn't taken anything. She had simply refused to let herself be crushed. And Artyom, for the first time, understood that growing up isn't just about working, paying your bills, or wearing a wedding ring. Growing up is sometimes having the courage to say to the person who raised you, I love you, but you no longer control my life. And maybe that's really, deep down, the true turning point of this story. Not the argument, not the slammed door, not even Matcha leaving that day. The real turning point is the moment when two people understand that a relationship doesn't survive because of silence. But thanks to respect, thanks to boundaries, thanks to the courage to choose each other, even when it displeases those who think they have all the rights, in their modest kitchen, among a Japanese dictionary, a few owl figurines, and projects scribbled on loose sheets of paper, Matcha and Artyom finally began to live as they had dreamed. Free, imperfect, but together. And for the first time in a long while, Masha told herself that she was no longer just surviving in someone else's life. She was finally living her own.